Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for another very special edition of WOWSA Live with our host, Ned Dennison. Ned?
Hello, everyone. We've got a very different set of interviews for you today. We are going to interview the parents of 3 young English Channel swimmers. And it should be fascinating because I've not had this conversation before. Normally, we talk to honorees in the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. The young honorees who swam the channel, their parents are either no longer with us or they were afraid of what their parents might say, so they didn't want anything to do with this. So it should be interesting. We have Christine, whose daughter was from Canada. We've got George, his son is from Europe, and we've got Dhananjay, his son is from India. So welcome, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Ned.
And what I'd like to do is, I'd like to first give a disclaimer. I know George's son extremely well, was on the boat, and Dhananjay and his family hosted me for a few days in India when I came out to do a swim there. And Christine and I have met about 3 weeks ago on the internet. So I don't know Christine as well. So what I'd like to do is, Christine, we'll start with you. Tell us about your daughter. Was she a high performer, an achiever in school, in the pool, and generally before she took on the English Channel?
She's got so many different areas where she excels, but she's always been a high performer in school, in everything she does academically has always been top grade. So she's really excited right now watching her as she's older, stepping into her studies and growing and maturing. She's not my little 16-year-old adventurer. She's, maturing into a really neat young woman. And in the pool, she is an excellent open water swimmer. We always joked about her pool swimming because flip turns, pool technique, it was just not there. It was the biggest joke on the face of the earth, watching this girl compete in a pool. So always excelled at 1500, but it was very funny when she would do her flip turns. So not a pool swimmer, very much an excellent open water swimmer though.
George, you're on next.
Yeah, I'd have to concur with that. Owen was exceptional as a student in school, very focused, every project determined, and very precise in planning anything. We always loved the water. Owen was always, as we're speaking academically, I think here he excelled in school. In at very early stages, showed a flair for languages, but his memory and his detail. I remember, of the first signs traveling. We were going to Cornwall. And this was long before sat-navs, and we had one journey, and he planned that journey meticulously before we went. And I can remember every junction, this 12-year-old boy in the back seat shouting left, third exit, and I said, oh my God, what are we dealing with here? And so from very early stages, this is an honesty interview. This isn't about putting anybody on a pedestal, but there's absolutely no doubt. We've all seen, we've all been there. We've all been in school ourselves, and I would have to say exceptional,
And Dhananjay, you and your wife wrote a book about some of the challenges you had with your son. So you're going to give us a slightly different answer, which I think is going to be a great contrast.
Actually, not really. He is not. He was a below average student, and also he was in swimming. Also, he is below average. He's average. He started his swimming at the age of 9. And but he started performing at the age of 15 when he was in 10th in school, and we have to wait for his performance for 6 years long period.
Christine, back to you. When did your daughter catch the long distance open water bug? And how did it happen?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. like we're a swimming family. So the girls have been in and out of the water since they were little. We were just talking about this the other day that when they were young, I would often do their tub time. They'd get their jammies on and we'd head down to the lake to go watch the sunset, read a book. And always from like, you know, the time they're 2 years old until they'll be soaking wet coming back from the beach. So pajamas always had sand all over them. And so the girls have been swimming for years. And I think I swam a big swim in 2011 and my girls were alongside of me for that. And we watched a few other young swimmers do some neat things here in Canada, and it sort of evolved, over the course of a couple of years, and it was just neat watching her reach for some really cool things.
So this was if mom can do a long swim, I can do a long swim.
I think so. Yeah, it was interesting to watch her make the decision to swim Lake Ontario first and then move on to the English Channel after. And we had actually planned to do the channel together, not together, but the same year. I ended up having an injury that in 2016 that prevented me from training with her, but it's just something we've always done together, all three of us. So yeah, it just kind of evolved.
And George, the open water bug and then the distance bug. I guess there's two different bugs.
Yeah. The open water bug, I love the water all my life. I used to call myself a swimmer until I started to meet yours truly and a few more. Owen was in the pool, in the water, I suppose, within days or maybe 2 or 3 weeks of coming home from hospital. So, you know, I grew up by one of the most beautiful rivers in Southern Ireland, lived in it, fished it, know every single bit of it. So that was there, but so that influence was with him. Everywhere we went, there was water. I wasn't very involved in any other sports. I wasn't involved in sport at all, actually. Water to me was leisure. I liked getting in, staying in as long as I could and getting out again, and really felt good for it. Was never a good swimmer. The biggest influence was his grandfather, an absolutely exceptional man. I get emotionally moved. We just lost him recently, and sorry, I didn't realize I feel like
so Tommy used to go down to the river every day. Swim in just about the same spot, and he was like the Pied Piper. He had a group of friends and colleagues that would go with him. Yeah,
long before I even met his daughter, my now wife, we admired Tommy. Tommy is known, by everybody. Again, swam a bit like myself, but swam more consistently. It was like a religion to him. Every morning before work, like Tommy swam up to the age of 85 years of age. But this was Owen's influence. Owen idolized him. And basically, like, Tom became his life coach, really. And the influences were nothing but good. They idolized each other, actually. And so if the open water bug came from his grandfather, without a doubt, yeah.
And Dhananjay, you're in Mumbai, which is a little more difficult to get open water around the corner. How did your son get the open water bug, and how did he turn on to distance?
In my school days, we had read stories in our school about people who swam the English Channel. I was always fascinated by the stories of Mihir Sen and Taranath Shenoy. So I have that in mind. That they are for me celebrities, and always I was thinking in my school days that once whether I can do it, but unfortunately I was not a good swimmer. I was a volleyball player, so I was not. But when Shubham started his swimming, at one of the swim, we met one para swimmer, Rajaram Ghag. He swam English Channel. Um, who swam the English Channel in, I think, 1998, something around that. Shubham was good distance swimmers by then. So I casually asked him if he would like to attempt something like English Channel. He immediately agreed to the idea of swimming the English Channel, and our open water journey started.
Christine, the next question is, tell us how you as a family had this conversation, the discussion about going to the English Channel. And while the cost is, the cost and the time is significant, what were the other big factors that were weighing in your mind?
It's been a few years, so I asked the girls what some of the concerns were when we began and the discussion of doing the English Channel. We're all freshwater swimmers, so for us, the change, like trying to understand what does a swim look like in saltwater versus freshwater, and never having been stung by jellyfish or experienced buoyancy in saltwater. We went down to Florida the year that the girls swam, and we spent 2 weeks hanging out in the Keys, swimming 6-8 hour days, looking at fish and purposefully getting stung by jellyfish so that we could, and we did it as a family together. We were like, all right, let's go down and get stung by jellyfish and figure out what that looks like. So really it was flipping over to saltwater swimming versus freshwater, and we needed to learn about that. So that was probably one of the biggest learning curves for us in moving in the decision to go pursue the English Channel. So yeah, we had fun preparing for it. We still talk about the Keys trip a lot.
So George, I remember phoning you at one point. It was a very famous phone call. And I said, George, I think Owen is planning on swimming the English Channel. I don't know if he's talked to you. I don't know if he's used your credit card already to book his trip, but you need to be aware of this and either embrace it or slow it down, because he's on a mission, George.
Yeah, we were used to Owen thinking big, especially with the group. He started, he was open water swimming with, there was, and living in Ireland, when you open water swim, obviously you're going to be swimming with people that ambition is going to be there, because the English Channel is so accessible to us from here. We can drive there. And yeah, it was never a shock because of the people he was swimming with, with the Lee Swims and Sandy Cove swimmers. And I mean, that conversation was always going on. It was only a matter of time that it became Owen's conversation. It seemed a bit young, but he had a fantastic group of friends and mentors. And, his original pool coach was always still, focused, very, very much interested in what he was doing. His open water mentors were there, and everybody had huge confidence in him. And I got to know the individuals that he was swimming with, and I could see their, the respect. I could see they could see things in Owen that maybe I couldn't see. Fear might have clouded me seeing his ability. And definitely that was all put to rest by the likes of yourself and Dave. Dave was another mentor of Owen's, fantastic swimmer, a brilliant support to us as a family. We became friends, we'll be friends forever. So the conversation evolved naturally, organically, from the group that he was swimming with. Yeah, it was bound to happen.
And Dhananjay, for you, if I remember right, I think this journey was the first time you and your family had left India. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
So this was a big decision for you folks. Tell us about how it came about.
After the day, I casually asked Shubham about the English Channel swim. He took a keen interest on it and kept asking me if we could actually attempt it. Post that was post that we as a family discussed about all the aspects involving English channel swim and how do we manage the finance, and we all were on board post that decision. There was multiple concerns and worries like acclimatization of cold water. Um, that is the biggest concern for us. We have warm weather here in India. So we decided to send Shubham and his mother 2 months in advance to train at Dover and get used to the cold water. Meanwhile, me and my daughter joined them 1 week before their swim. And second aspect was managing the finance was very difficult task for our family, because what is the difference in rupees, Indian rupees, and dollar or UK, I can say pounds. Managing the finance is a very difficult task for us, but somewhere we managed it with the help of our friends, some few small sponsors, and I'm associated with Nehru Gymkhana. I have friends there. They helped me a lot in this English channel swim.
Christine, this may or may not be a question that ever occurred to you, but did you give any thought to how you might manage your daughter's success? She goes off at this young age, swims the English Channel, and then let's imagine she's successful, but her feet don't ever come back to the ground, and her head is this big, and her ego's out of control. Did you give any thought to that at all, or were you just confident she was grounded enough to handle it?
Yeah, Trin doesn't have an ego. The swim wasn't about, I'm so great, I'm so good. It was about learning for her, and learning about who she was and respecting who she was. Her swim across the English Channel was a learning experience for her. And I wasn't worried. Very humble young lady. I watched this girl complete her English Channel trial swim. She swam 17.5 kilometers in 52 and 54 degree water. It was her skill and her humbleness. It was incredible to witness at a number of different points as she trained for her swim. And when she finished her swim, it's always been about the support that we've had around us. The girls finished the English Channel together. So my other daughter hopped in and they swam to the point together and they finished it, and it was very cute watching them both in the waves try to get up onto the rocks because it was wavy and windy. But there was no ego in this, and it really just was about her learning about herself. And I think that's the value of these swims, right? As we watch our kids develop and grow and learn, it wasn't about, oh, I'm so great. It was really about her learning what she's capable of when she puts her mind to something. And so I wasn't worried about that with her.
George?
Yeah, I wasn't worried about it. Owen was in some ways a very quiet young boy, I suppose a young man. He would never, he wouldn't gloat on anything. And then again, he was amongst giants like yourself, Ned, and Steve Redmond. He was swimming with these people. He knew that the English Channel probably was only the start of all of this for some people. So, and of course, I was becoming aware of this as well. And but it was a deeply personal one thing I did learn halfway, coming towards the English Channel, was that this was a very personal journey for one. We learned a lot after the English Channel on that. I think that you probably know what I'm talking about here. It was a deeply personal challenge. Owen really wanted to, to show himself what he was capable of. He knew he could do it, but he just wanted to see it done. And we didn't have to worry about where he was going to go with this success. He didn't see it as success. He saw it as a fantastic achievement, but definitely nothing to be, his feet are firmly on the ground, always were, always will be. Yeah.
So he was on national television, and he was the Grand Marshal for the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Fermoy. When he was the Grand Marshal, George, did he wave at you at all, or was he looking at the other side of the street? No, didn't wave at you at all.
So Owen is not for the stage. Owen is not for the stage. He's a quiet man. He had to do it because it's an honor in our community. That's a huge honor. I mean, most people would have to have a lifetime of community work done before they'd be offered such a position in a town like Fermoy. The Grand Marshal of the St. Patrick's, it was brilliant. It really was. But I think one of the most proudest time was the open day his school gave him. Like, Owen never participated in the normal school sports. Now swimming was, of course, but it's a big, what we call a GA in Irish, hurling and football school. They were the boys that were achieving in sport. But Owen, it never bothered him. It never put him down. And the school really saw that, and the principal of the school, they really took him under his wing to show people, you don't have to just be playing football. You don't just have to play hurling to be a great sports person. And that really, when his school held him up on a pedestal, I saw how proud he was. He was very proud of himself, but just for that day. He moved on from there and got back in the water, and that cooled him down fairly quick. Yeah, he was good.
And Dhananjay, one of the things that I remember about India, which really came at me, was the emphasis on education and how many millions of students are competing for a few places at the next level of school. So talk about your son's journey and what possible things would come out of a success.
As my Shubham and his younger sister Siddhi has always had a very humble upbringing, which always keep them grounded. We also had sports psychologist Dr. Shubhangi Datar on board, who made sure Shubham was psychologically fit before and after the swim. That's a big help for us.
One of the things that happened with George's son is I kind of found myself in sort of this mentoring position somehow. So I contacted one of our honorees, Nick Adams, who had swum the English Channel at 16, did a double at 18, and has helped many young swimmers from his position at Eton as a teacher. So I called up Nick at one point and I said, look, I'm a bit worried about something. Like, if it doesn't happen, I don't know how this young man's going to handle it, because I don't think he ever had kind of a setback in his life. I think everything he kind of turned his hand to came out well. So should I, in his training, should I organize something to make sure he fails? Should I give him an experience of failing at a 6 or an 8 hour swim to give him that experience before it happened? And Nick's advice was, no. He said, don't do that. He goes, that kid's biggest advantage is he thinks he's invincible. He thinks he can do anything. So you need to make sure he has that confidence, and you need to keep him safe. So Christine, did you give any thought to how you might deal with your daughter if she got to Dover and there was no swim, or she was a mile from France and a rope got caught in the propeller, or if she just had enough after 4 hours and you were left with this not so happy young lady?
Well, I think in training, both for Lake Ontario and for the English Channel, there's always so many hiccups in training. So she was well, and she talks about a few of them, over the years, like some of the successes and non-successes of training swims. And for us, it really just was about the journey to go and complete it. And there's a lot of things outside of our control with open water swimming. And so I think if one of those things happened to happen, then we would manage it. But it's something we talked about, and we didn't come to a firm answer or conclusion about what would happen if she failed. Or the swim wasn't completed. We did talk about it earlier, and we didn't have a plan for what happened if it wasn't successful, because there's so many times that open water swims aren't successful. So if everything aligns and goes well, then the swim is successful. And I think we were, pretty realistic about possibilities popping up if they did. And the pressure to complete the swim, I think, is what we were facing. She was all the media and all of this, and we made a decision when we got to England not to do a lot of media. So we said no to all of it. We didn't respond to interviews and things like that. A lot happened like within the year after when she got back, but not when we were there. And we just wanted to enjoy the swim and enjoy the process. So I hope that answers that question a little bit.
Okay. George, I'm gonna set you up with this one just in case you've forgotten the bloody details of it. But there were 3 swimmers from our group going for English Channel at the same time. It was a young Frenchman. There was a woman who had never done the channel who was going for a double, and there was your son. We all arrived on something like Monday. We're staying in Varn Ridge under the honor organizations in small caravans, and the weather was dreadful. There was no swim on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And now the decision had to be made. Do we all stay around for the springtime? And there were crew members flying in and out because they hadn't counted on 2 weeks. George, your relatives and friends were popping in socially and popping out again off to the cathedral, whatever they were doing. The next week, the weather was terrible. No swim Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Then it looked like there was going to be an opportunity, and crew were flying back in to try to cover for this possibility. It looked like Owen might start on the Saturday morning, but in the end, the young lady doing the double went. She was still in the water, and then the Frenchman went. It was now Sunday night, and if he didn't get in the water by 3 o'clock in the morning, his window would be over and he wouldn't get to swim. The lady doing the double took a little while. She took 35 hours, if my memory serves me right. Landed at Dungeness Point, which is a while from there. The boat eventually got to Dover with about an hour to spare. We congratulated her, threw her and her stuff on the pier. He got on with his crew and off we went. So you had to be giving some thought to at least what happens if this kid doesn't get to swim.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think I developed an ulcer that I now live with for the rest of my life. Yeah. It was incredible. There was a lot of frustrations going on. Relationships were challenged, to say the least. I became a taxi driver for airports. I was driving roads and cars I never knew. Never drove in London, drove to London, back up again. And, I wouldn't be the most confident of travelers. Owen stayed quiet during all of this. He sat back. he left you, me, Dave, his Uncle John, Jackie, do all the worrying. I thought I knew what he was going through in his head, but he just kept swimming around and he's full half of the glass all the time. My job is the empty. I'm lucky to have a glass, never mind the empty part of the glass. But yeah, but Ned, we all felt it. At the failure, we had discussed that so many times. That was my job, I suppose. Like I was constantly worried about, I'll always worry about the things that can go wrong. And every scenario was covered. I watched carefully his mentoring team coming up to all of this, and you know, I knew I would never be on that boat. Couldn't, physically wouldn't have been able for it. I would have jeopardized everything at that stage. I think I probably would have panicked, to be honest. Yeah, he held his head great. If he failed, you know, I don't think he'd have seen it. I think he'd have been okay. I don't know whether I've given you that answer 6 months or 3 months before the swim, but out there, I said, yeah, he's well prepared. He's well prepared for not to get to the other side, because he never lost his cool. You know, he's lost his cool for less here, and no, he stayed cool. Obviously, he was feeling it under his skin, but he left us do the worrying, and he did the right thing. Yeah.
Before we go to Dhananjay, just one comment for people out there. It's not unusual for a swimmer to prepare for a couple of years, lay out all the money, fly themselves and their crew to Dover, and not swim. The conditions are so bad, you don't swim, you lose your spot, and maybe you can come back in 2-3 years' time. I know grown men who are successful in life, in business, it has destroyed their soul. They've never been the same for the experience of just not getting wet. So it's one of the things when people talk about open water swimming, they often don't understand this, that there are some swims like that just don't happen. So Dhananjay, tell us about any concerns you had about your son.
I was worried, but I had confidence looking the preparation Shubham had done leading towards the sim. But we always told Shubham that no matter what happens, success and failures both are part of life. As you know, he was, that time he was around 18 years old. Means he's teenager and there are so many obstructions. And he did come across failed swim in previous last 5 years. But he always kept his head high and didn't give up. And we kept on supporting him always. So that's why he still now he is very keen to doing open water swims. Next swims he is planning. That is there.
Christine, for you, biggest surprise you got and the one thing you might change if you could do it differently?
We were not prepared, even though we went to the Keys to get stung by jellyfish. We were not prepared for the amount of jellyfish that Trin encountered, to the point where even the pilot said, could someone stand on the front of the boat and let her know when they're coming? Because there was just happened to be that many, and they weren't in, you know, we weren't expecting them for, you know, a few hours, but the whole in English water from the start right to when we got to French waters, just piles and piles and piles of jellyfish. So can't change anything about the jellyfish. I wish we had done a little bit more swimming with. She goes, well, the jellyfish in the Keys, they're beautiful. They're lovely. And she was not prepared for how ugly the jellyfish, that they're so big and all their long tentacles. And she ended up, there was a big barrel jellyfish that was like 1 meter wide that she came across. It was so that was our big surprise, was the volume and plethora of jellyfish. But that's just par for the course. So yeah.
The other two parents paid an extra 50 pounds for the jellyfish waiver. Their child didn't experience that. You really, Christine,
No
you really
way.
needed to do more research now. George, biggest surprise, what you might do differently?
Surprise? I was thinking about that one. There was no surprises really, other than, you know, the accommodation is something I would do differently. Yeah, I would definitely do the accommodation. And the big thing I would do differently is, and I know I'm contradicting my last comments, I would travel. I would have stayed. I should have gone on the boat. That was my own feelings at the time. I think it was the right decision at the time, but I will always regret not being on the boat. The owners of Van Ridge gave me their rooms so that I had good internet connections, and, you know, with good phone connections. It was great. I had good contact with home, which was great because, you know, I had Breda, my wife, on the phone all the time, and Tom was on the phone all the time. So even though it was the middle of the night, so I was able to be that buffer, which was great. But I'll always miss not being on the boat with John, yourself, and Jackie and Dave. I'll always miss that, and to watch the swim. And the photography was atrocious, by the way. And I am a photographer. So,
George, if you had been on the boat and you were endangering the success, you do realize I would have thrown you over.
Probably, yeah. So yeah, it was probably, so if I go on the boat, you won't be there.
So Dhananjay, your first big family trip to Europe, surprises, what you might have done differently?
It is very interesting tour for our family. The acceptance of open water swimming community we met at Dover was the biggest surprise along the way. Swimmers, crew members, and everyone who were introduced were always happy to help. And Shubham was always taken care of by the senior swimmers, as he was one of the youngest swimmer that year. If I could change the thing that would be weather. Shubham swam but at the same time, Shubham swam in brutal weather, but at the same time, the rough weather was something that made the swim memorable.
For all of you, and starting with Christine, has there been a moment since where your daughter's done something or said something, and you sort of smile inside and you go, I can trace it to the confidence that she got from that swim?
And I'll echo the other two parents there. England was our time there. We spent 3 weeks there before her swim, and the volume of people that we encountered, and the kindness of complete strangers, the swimming community is remarkably fantastic. And as I watch the girls get older, what I enjoy most is watching them share the very best things about themselves with others. And I know that example has come from all the people that we get to spend our time with in this fantastic sport. So, as I watch, the girls volunteer, or the things that they take interest in, and the way they share their expertise, whatever that is, I know that example, that the examples they've had from the adults in their lives, that we were lucky enough to be in England. There was another young swimmer from Australia, Fern, that was swimming as well. I know that the young person that she's become is really a result of the fantastic community that exists in our sport. So not necessarily the swim itself. I think when I think about watching them share the best of themselves with others, it really does come from the example that we've had in our sport. So yeah.
One thing on that, I did a spreadsheet a couple of years ago that was entitled something. So congratulations, you swam the English Channel. Now what do you owe?
Yeah.
And it was a whole bunch of questions. And it was, how many people went to England? How long were they there? How many people were involved in your qualifying swims? How many people kayaked for you and stood on the beach and whatever? And it spit out a number at the end. And often the number was something like, you owe 70 days of volunteer work, because that's what they gave you, was 70 days or 100 days, whatever it was. And people would call me up and say, this can't possibly be right. And I would walk them through it and I'd go, hang on a minute. You had 4 people in Dover for 3 weeks. You count it up. George, anything about your son that you look back and smile and say, I can trace it to that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, it didn't come to me straight away when I read the question. I think more so when Christine was speaking there, like Owen was academically wise, always knew exactly where he was going, where he was at, planning, logistics, even at a tender age, he knew. But like all of us, we're never sure where we are and socially. And, when Owen went to Sandy Cove, when Owen went to Dover, and he knew exactly where he was. From that day on, he now knows exactly where he is in life, who his friends are, what's important. Very, very sure of all of that now. Not a lot of young people could say that. And to be absolutely positive about it. The other big thing is Owen saying yes to things that he would never have the confidence to do. He gave motivational speeches to insurance companies at 17 years of age, up and down the country, bankers, I'm thinking, the St. Patrick's Day parade, he stood in front of his whole school and spoke to them. And I'm thinking, is this my son? I mean, I always knew, of course, he's well capable, but this swimming, he knew he could do something that was exceptional and admired, and not just the completion of the swim, but the training and the ambition to get there and the grit to keep at it and determination. And that all is character strengthening without a doubt. And yeah, I see it every day. I see him when he comes down here for the weekend and he's looking for a new home, and I see the way he's putting his work, that all comes from that without a doubt. So yeah.
I tell a funny story about Owen. He completed the English Channel and then he organized a big swim. And I had to have a very difficult conversation with him to say, Owen, we know you're completely confident, but for the insurance company, we can't have a 16-year-old being in charge of this. We got to put somebody in there that's at least 18. Dhananjay, looking at your son over the last years, are the things that you just smile about?
As George says, same. My experience is same like George. Before the English Channel swim, Shubham was a very introvert kid. He didn't interact much and also had stage fear. But after the completion of his first big swim English Channel, Shubham took up public speaking and started giving motivational speeches at colleges and college events and universities and corporate sectors. That is the change in Shubham's personality after English Channel swim.
Folks, I want to thank you very, very much for your help. I'm sure you're going to be an inspiration to some future parents who are going, oh, my 15-year-old wants to swim the channel. What do I do next year? But thank you very much for all of your help and honesty with everybody. Take care.
Thanks for having us, Ned.
Thanks, Ned. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.